Hey everyone, welcome to Massachusetts Sports Central. This is our NFL Power Rankings after Wild Card Week of the playoffs. Just to remind everybody what these rankings are, this list represents how likely we think that each team will win Super Bowl 52. So we're in the playoffs now. So last week was the end of the regular season, so only the playoff teams can win. So only ranking the newly eliminated and remaining teams the rest of this postseason. It also should go without saying that the 8 teams remaining after Wild Card Week will be the top 8, even if you can argue some of the eliminated teams are better than them. Okay, on to the rankings. So, number 12, falling one slot from our final regular season rankings, are the Buffalo Bills. They only fell one slot, so I thought they were probably the second weakest team going into the playoffs. They lost, so they're going to be in the bottom 4 regardless. Terrible offensive game, even though Shady actually seemed to be perfectly fine and played well. Pretty good on the ground, pretty good in the air. But they could only muster 3 points, which is pretty pathetic. Obviously, the defense didn't do too bad, holding the Jags to just 10 points. But clearly, they were at best the second weakest team going into the playoffs. And since they're the one that got eliminated, they are going to be dead last in these rankings. Number 11, falling down 4 slots, the Kansas City Chiefs. So getting upset by who we consider the worst team in the playoffs, the Titans, that's going to drop you down. They also blew an 18-point lead, one of the largest comeback wins in playoff history by the Titans against the Chiefs. Most people are blaming the Chiefs more than giving credit to the Titans, if that's fair or not. One reason is one of the other largest comebacks ever in the playoffs was another Chiefs team a couple of years ago. So, there's a little bit of a recent history of the Chiefs having those kind of problems. It was inexplicable why they were not running Hunt at all. They ran him just about as many times in the first quarter as they did the whole rest of the game, even though they were up by 3 scores most of the game. They were up 3 scores, and then they were up 2 scores, and then they were up, obviously that kept getting chipped away. But basically they weren't running down the clock like you would have expected. So anyway, what started off as a very promising season for the Chiefs ended pretty terribly. And like I said, they're number 11 in our final rankings here. Number 10, falling down 1 slot, the Carolina Panthers. So, didn't think that they were going to win, thought the Saints would beat them. They actually made the game a little bit closer than I would have expected. Frankly, I feel the Saints dominated them for 3 quarters, but they did put up a nice, but they hung around, and then they had a nice rally at the end. I didn't believe in this team all year. I think Cam Newton is somewhat overrated. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. Just people talk about him like he's one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks. He's above average as a quarterback, and he's very good running. So that's, that obviously gives him a lot of extra value because of that. So obviously the defense wasn't horrendous, but obviously was not able to hold the Saints down enough. I will say that Cam does not have like a plethora of really impressive weapons around him, but he also doesn't seem to really elevate their level either. So Panthers eliminated. Frankly, they did better than I was expecting them to by a decent amount this season. So, finishing in the top 10 isn't that bad. Number 9, falling 5 slots, the LA Rams. Really thought the Rams had a legitimate shot at the Super Bowl. Was pretty surprised that they lost. Now, the NFC had pretty strong teams overall. Even the Panthers, who I was just pooping on a bit, like they were certainly better than either the Chiefs or the Titans coming into the playoffs. And obviously after what happened, you could definitely say that they were better than the Chiefs, and you could have made that argument pretty strongly beforehand. Probably could have argued they were kind of right with the Jags as well. So, basically, other than Pittsburgh and New England, you could argue that every team that made the playoffs in the NFC was better. So that's just all going to say that, it wasn't like they lost to, even though most people were picking the Rams, but you definitely had people picking the Falcons. I picked the Rams, and they were the home team. They had more wins and all that kind of stuff. The Falcons weren't a bad team. They weren't like a sham that they actually made the playoffs kind of thing. So the Rams, they rested all their guys in the last week of the season. There's always kind of mixed thoughts on how that's going to work. Obviously, the fact that they lost, they're going to get second guess more for that. Gurley had a big game, but maybe not big enough. Goff seemed to struggle a little bit. He wasn't bad, but he didn't do enough. The defense, gave up a fair amount of points, but really didn't get killed. That's that. They're gone. I think they're going to be a good team again next year, though. I like Sean McVay. Goff showed a lot, and Gurley's obviously a very good young running back. Cooper Kupp was a good young receiver. They have some talent on defense, most notably, obviously, Aaron Donald. So, assuming they are able to re-sign him. So, I think there's a lot to look forward to in LA. Just didn't get it done in that game. All right, number 8, moving up 4 slots. As kind of mentioned a few times before, the team really thought was the weakest coming into the playoffs, the Tennessee Titans. But hey, they showed a lot of character, a lot of guts, a lot of heart in the second half, battling back from what should seem like an insurmountable deficit, especially because this is not a high-flying team. If you were down 18, but you were like, last year's Falcons where you scored 36 points a game, you could score 18 to 25 points pretty easily in a half. Titans were not that kind of offense, so the fact that they were able to battle back makes it even that much more impressive. Some crazy plays, obviously. That first non-fumble on the forward progress sack, that's pretty debatable. But then Titans also lost one on what looks like should have been a fumble on the Kelsey hit. I totally agree that he was getting pushed back, and they should have called forward progress on the 2-point conversion that he fumbled. So I don't think that one should be controversial. The pass to himself for a touchdown. The rule is you have to be every part of your body has to be over the line of scrimmage. So even though like some of the replays look like his toe was over, that doesn't matter. So there was some crazy things going on there, but overall the Titans just, outclassed the Chiefs in the second half, and the Chiefs choked it away. And the Titans, took that opportunity and ran with it. It's a little bit of both. Obviously the Chiefs screwed up bad, but the Titans still needed to take advantage of it, and they did. All right. So, number 7, moving on up 3 spots, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Number 3 seed in the AFC. They're going to be facing Pittsburgh this week. I don't think that they're going to be... If they play like they did against the Bills, there's no chance they're going to win that game. The defense was dominating, but the Buffalo offense is nowhere near as good as the Pittsburgh one. And the Pittsburgh defense, I don't think is significantly worse, if worse at all, than the Bills defense. I think the Bills had a solid defense, but so do the Steelers. So if Bortles throws for under 100 yards again, they're going to be in trouble. As I've said here and again, I have not believed in the Jags all year. So I only have them rated again higher than the Titans, who I got down on, even though I actually like them most of the year. Got down on them by the end of the year. The Jags do have a really good defense, but I just don't see that being enough. But they're still alive, and they still have a chance. All right, number 6, moving up 2 slots, the Atlanta Falcons. So as we were saying during the Rams blurb, Falcons stepped up. They their defense played good enough to hold the best, the number 1 scoring offense to just 13 points. Their offense was good enough to score 26 on a pretty good Rams defense. They traveled. They they were playing on the road. They they did well. They're actually favorites against the Eagles next week in Philadelphia. So obviously I have them ranked behind Philly, so I don't necessarily believe that. I'm going to give it some more thought before my game picks, but at this point I am still saying, so let's just move right on to their opponent next week, the number 5 staying put Philadelphia Eagles. It's the home field. So the Eagles have a good defense and they have a good running game, and I'm not convinced that Foles is a disaster. He's not Wentz, but he's not necessarily a disaster. Now, if he plays like a disaster, that changes things. But if he kind of, game manages and doesn't screw up, then I think that they have a chance, because I do think the defense can slow down the Falcons' offense. I do think that they probably can run on them as long as, Foles plays just well enough to keep them honest. And you have to be concerned about a warm weather dome team going and playing outside in Philly. Now, I'm not sure what the forecast is still a little out there. It does look maybe like it's going to be kind of warm, but there's supposed to be a cold front coming in right afterwards. So if things shift just a little bit, it could be really cold and yucky there, in which case, you got to give the Eagles an advantage there. Home field, I think, is bigger in this situation than for any of the other teams. So, if they had been if they were teetering on a bye and when Wentz went down and they ended up as the 3 seed, I would have had no confidence that they were going to do anything past possibly winning their first game. But having home field as a cold weather outdoor team is a big deal. Since these teams that generally play in domes are not used to that, and they almost always play worse. So I'm certainly not saying the Falcons have no chance, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that the Eagles have no chance either. All right, number 4, the only wild card weekend team that moved ahead of a bye team, the New Orleans Saints, moving up 2 slots, basically taking the spot that originally had been occupied by the Rams before they got eliminated. So I said the NFC overall is just very strong. The Saints, I could see going to the Super Bowl without too much trouble. I think it actually worked out pretty well for them, that they're going to, in some ways, that they're actually going to be playing the Vikings instead of the Eagles. Even though the Vikings, I think, are a better team, and they're going to have to go to their house, the Vikings play in a dome. The Saints are much better in a dome. Now, obviously, they're much better at home, but but just in general, those are the conditions that they're used to playing in, and they should be able to play their best game plan in those conditions. Now, the Vikings defense and the crowd might have something to say about that, but the conditions are not going to be the problem. Where if they were traveling to Philadelphia, I would have said all the same stuff I said about the Falcons, and maybe even more so, just because it's well documented over the years. The road and home splits for the Saints are pretty dramatic. I probably should have looked this up, but I'm not sure if they're nearly as dramatic this year. But like I said, just historically, that's been a big deal. And just in general, like I said, a dome team going to an outdoor Northeast team in the playoffs is always an advantage for that home team. Again, I'm going to wait till I think about everything for my game picks. Obviously I have the Vikings ahead of them, but I think that's going to be the best game of the week in the division round, Saints and Vikings. That's going to be a good game. All right, number 3, staying put, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, they didn't play. They're going to be hosting the Jags. That's kind of what everybody probably was expecting coming in. They obviously lost to the Jags very badly earlier in the year. I think they went something like 9-1 after that, though. Or maybe even 10-1, something like that. Because so it was pretty early in the year, and they obviously played much better afterwards overall. I don't see Ben throwing 5 interceptions. I don't see the kind of domination that happened before. If the Jags defense really steps up, they could definitely hold the Steelers to a modest number of points, but then it's going to be incumbent on the offense to actually still outscore them. It doesn't matter if they hold them to say 17 points if they can only score 10 again. So we'll have to see how that goes. But I do think the Steelers have been the best or second best team in the AFC all year long. Generally the second best, but at times it could certainly have been argued that they were the best. After the first couple of weeks when you had the obviously the Chiefs smoke and mirrors. Preseason I picked them as going to the AFC Championship game, and I have no reason to think that any of that's going to change at this point. Okay. Moving on, number 2, the Minnesota Vikings. As I was saying in the Saints blurb, the Vikings are a really good team. I think that, as I said, condition-wise, this works. But there was no quote-unquote good draw for the Vikings in that regard because, the the other three, all the other three teams, you had two dome teams and an outdoor warm weather team. So it's not, there's no real super advantage in that kind of situation. But Vikings do have a good home field advantage. I believe they were 7-1 this year. They play, they have a great defense, which, as I say, defenses travel. They don't have to travel, but under any conditions, you would like that defense. Like I said, I'm gonna reserve judgment until I, see injury reports, think a little bit more about some exact matchups and stuff like that. But like I said, Saints Vikings should be the best game this week. I do think the Saints overall probably match up a little bit better with the Vikings than, say, if the Rams had won. But that's a minuscule thing. Like I said, I do think it's a bigger advantage for the Saints than the other way around. Like I wouldn't have liked them nearly as much going to Philly just because of the outdoor conditions, even though, like I said, I think the Vikings are the best team in the NFC right now. So I expect fully like I said, I fully expect that to be the best game coming out of there. And frankly, I think the winner of the Saints Vikings is probably going to be the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. But we shall see. And especially if it's Vikings, because then they will have the home game. Obviously, if the Saints win and Eagles win, they'll have the same issues that I was talking about if they had played this week. So, but I do think those are the two best teams left in the NFC, at least playing in Minnesota this week. All right, and number 1, staying put, the New England Patriots. So, I would have had them here no matter what, but I also feel that they did somewhat luck out that the Titans beat the Chiefs. Now, I guess only in as much as, in theory, the Chiefs are a much better team, and that's who they would have been playing if they had won. But the fact that they did choke away that lead and didn't play that great and made some questionable play calls and this and that and the other thing, I really don't think the Chiefs would have been a hard game either. But they do match up a little bit better against the Pats, and overall they certainly had a better season than the Titans did until last week. So, but anyway, I think the Titans were the weakest team coming into the playoffs. I think they're the weakest team remaining in the playoffs. So, I would be utterly shocked if the Patriots do not go to the AFC Championship game. I assume they will be playing the Steelers. It would be less shocking if the Jags beat the Steelers than if the Titans beat the Patriots. This is clearly the biggest mismatch of the week. Of course, that doesn't always mean that the better team's going to win, but it's hard. It would just be really, really, really hard to see the Patriots losing to a clearly hugely inferior and completely inexperienced Titans team at home in Foxborough when it's going to be, cold and snowy and all that kind of stuff. I believe it's supposed to be in the 20s and kind of maybe light snow and stuff that night. Obviously the weather keeps changing, but it ain't going to be like Tennessee down there. Let's put it that way. So still think the Pats are certainly the Pats, I think, of all the teams left are the biggest favorite to get to the conference championship. I still think that they're the favorites to come out of the AFC, and I still think they're overall the favorites to win the Super Bowl. But obviously, after this week, things get a little more real, and they, nothing even remotely close. Not to say that the Titans are an easy out. That's insulting to a team that did win more than they lost. They did make the playoffs, and they did win their first playoff game. However, this is the easiest game by far that they will play the rest of the year. That is for the Pats. If they win it, they're going to have a much tougher test next week, no matter if it's the Jags or the Steelers. And if they get past that team, no matter which team they play that's still alive in the NFC, they're a bigger challenge than the Titans are. It's just how it is. All right. Anyway, thanks for watching, and please like, comment, and share the videos, and subscribe to our channel. You can also follow us on other social media. Facebook and Twitter are both @MA Sports Central. Thanks, and we will see you soon.